Hello, Assalamualaikum. So today we are going to present a video presentation on Malaysia's tax system. So the topic of our presentation is about comparison of GST and SST in Malaysia. So for our team, we're presented by my name is Ammar Ezzuddin, Daniel, Hakimi, Faez, Mujahid, and also Khairulamar. So the code of our the code of our subject is ACC 3623. So next, we are going to the introduction first. So for your information, Malaysia has used two main indirect tax system over the past 10 years, which is the sales and service tax, in bracket SST, and the goods and service tax, which is GST. Besides, the GST was introduced in April 2015 to replace the SST, aiming to improve transparency and efficiency in tax collection. However, in September 2018, the government abolished GST and introduced SST due to public concern and political decision. So next, we are going to the question number 8. Question A. So next, we are going to the question A. Illustrate the process of implementation GST and SST in Malaysia. So, the implementation of GST, which is Goods and Service Tax, in Malaysia began on 1 April 2015. It replaced the former SST system and created a more efficient and transparent tax system. So GST is a multi-stage tax because the GST is charged at every level of the supply chain, from manufacturer to retailer at a standard rate of 6%. So businesses had to register with the Royal Malaysian Customs Department, charge GST on sales, and could claim input tax on business purchases. So GST was viewed as a fairer because it limited the tax on tax impacts through the input tax credit. However, due to public dissatisfaction and political pressure, GST was repealed on 1st June 2018 as to absorb taxes on inputs and transfers. As political pressure, GST was repealed on 1st June 2018 as to absorb taxes on inputs and transferring this cost to consumer. This issue effect of taxes leads to higher prices. So for one example, in the food and beverage sector under SST, a restaurant needs to pay service tax on customer bills and must incur the sales tax on ingredient purchases from suppliers. These two tax leads to higher food menu pricing. On the other hand, if under GST, the restaurant could claim back the GST paid on the ingredients from supplier, thereby reducing operational costs and stabilizing prices. Therefore, GST is better positioned to manage inflation in sector like F&B. So we are going to the next question.
Alright, next I will explain the differences between GST and SST system. GST and SST are two different tax systems implemented in Malaysia. Each system has its own characteristics. GST is a multiple stage tax on a consumption at each level within the supply chains, where SST is a single stage tax that can be applied one time at a manufacturer or a certain service. One of the differences in the treatment of input tax. The manner in which GST treats input tax allow a registered business to claim input tax credit, meaning they get back the GST they have paid on a various purchase. They use their business for allowing the registered business to deduct this tax from their costs and not be charged tax on a tax double deduction, which is a double deduction. Next, SST does not have this input tax credit, reflect limiting the cost base around tax. GST also more transparent, as you can see the amount of tax in your invoice, while SST, where the value of the tax is hidden amongst the price of goods and service. which can cause the confusion for consumer to determine how much tax they are paying. GST is also applicable to much broader of goods and service compared to SST, leading to more comprehensive tax they can collect a revenue collection. SST is a narrower in tax base than GST, while GST is a administratively more complex system and less simple than using a SST as a collection system. It is better for a long-term economic development. That's all.
So, how do we determine which tax system yield higher revenue for the government, SST or GST? GST have higher revenue for the government compared to SST. It is a broad-based tax applied at all stages of the supply chain and capturing more taxable transactions. Based on fiscal report, which confirms that GST is more effective in generating revenue. SST being limited to specific goods and services and only taxed at one stage, results in lower tax collection and less efficient overall.
Okay, next, how do SST and GST affect consumers' prices? SST and GST have different impacts on consumer pricing based on how they apply within business supply chain. GST allows input tax credit, which allows the business to claim back the taxes based on purchases. This reduces overall costs, eliminate tax on tax, and provide opportunities for price stabilization or perhaps even price reductions. It also allows business to absorb increased costs with reduced prices on product and service. However, SST does not claim input taxes, which require business to absorb tax on inputs and transferring these costs to consumers. This issue effect of tax leads to higher price. For one example, in the food and beverage sectors, under SST, a restaurant needs to pay service tax on customer bills and must incur the sales tax on ingredient purchases from suppliers. These two taxes lead to higher food menu pricing. On the other hand, if under GST, the restaurant could claim back the GST paid on the ingredients from suppliers, thereby reducing operational costs and stabilizing prices. Therefore, GST is better positioned to manage inflation in sector like F&B.
Next, demonstrate your understanding by explaining why the government continues to implement the SST system even though GST is more effective and efficient. Even though GST is more efficient and have higher revenue, the Malaysian government continues to implement SST for several social and political reasons. The primary reason is public perception. When GST was introduced in 2015, many people believed that GST can make their cost of living to increase. This perception led to public backlash and was a major issue in the 2018 general election. The new government responded to public opinion and demanded the elimination of GST, returning to SST to ease the burden of taxes on the people. SST is also easier to administer and SST impacts fewer businesses, so compliance costs are lower, especially for small and medium enterprises. SST is also less obvious to consumers since the tax is usually fixed within the price, so is therefore less visible. This makes it politically safer. The re-implementation of GST would require substantial changes in administration processes, business and communication with the public, which is therefore expensive and risky. Lastly, during times of inflation, implementing a tax system like GST could trigger further dissatisfaction among consumers and resistance from businesses. SST is seen as less burden during difficult economic periods as it affects fewer goods and services and remains less visible to the public. In conclusion, although GST have more revenue potential, the government continues with SST to ensure public support and evade any backlash. We hope this presentation has provided clear insights into Malaysia's GST and SST system. That's all from us. Thank you.